This is a Danger Entertainment podcast. DangerEntertainment.net. Danger Entertainment Podcast Network.
My life sucks to the last drop. Are you gonna blow your head off? Take good aim and don't forget to duck. My life sucks every Monday and all the way to Sunday, but I wouldn't have it any other way. I don't care how you're doing, what's up or how's it hanging. I'd like to buy this world one last drink. Life sucks all of the time. Stick it up your sunshine, and then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day. And then you'll see the clouds every day.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of The Crazy Life. I'm Brian, and joining me as always is Hanno.
Hardly.
No Jen this week because
She's been screaming for vengeance.
apparently her voice has completely left her, as it tends to do from time to time, unfortunately. As long as I've known her, she's had this issue, to where every once in a while, her voice just completely goes out, or it's either that or she gets she's talked on here, she used to call it kind of like her B. Arthur voice. Her voice would get really deep all of a sudden. It was weird.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. But either way, hopefully she's resting her voice, even though I know better, because, I just can't see her sitting there not talking, so. I mean, I've known her like 70 years, so.
Yeah. Does she squeak when she loses her voice?
No, usually, like, if she loses her voice, usually it's pretty much gone. Or it gets, like, real light and kind of raspy to where you almost can't hear her.
I remember once, where you just can't hear her at all.
Yeah, it's really tough to hear her usually.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately. So, hopefully she's feeling better sooner off of that. Because, obviously she needs it for work, too. It's not like she just stares at a computer for work. She's on the phones and stuff with people, so it's makes all facets of her life a little difficult, probably. This would be the ideal time if you're the boss, you call the person in for the review, like, you don't have anything to say, huh? Oh, all right, well, I guess this went well. Anyway.
Oh, that's funny.
Well, as tradition goes, Hanno.
Yes.
I believe you're supposed to go first this time. Let me check. Yes.
Yes. According to the bylaws.
Right.
Yeah, wow. It's been a month, huh?
Yeah.
And I think it was like, a month before that, or even 6 weeks before that?
Yeah, it was something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you've had a lot going on. You've refocused on different stuff, so... Not that I'm saying you focused away from the show. It's just you focused toward really trying to get, you were working on that album and different stuff, and so. Yeah,
it was some priorities, and then this month it's just been work.
Yeah,
like just some long days, but really this was great. My chiropractor's office, they have one of those hydro beds, and they had a problem with it. Some electrical work, and first they asked for a meter, and I brought my meter.
I'm just thinking of the idea of electrical work with a hydro bed. It's like something doesn't seem right there.
Oh, trust me.
Yeah.
Like I get up there and I'm looking at this thing going, okay, and it's just mostly like, it's just you got circuit board. Yeah, they're just big circuit boards, and they're attached, and I guess they'd shorted one out already, and the thing was just, like, shorting all the time, and I'm like, hey, do you mind coming up and taking a look at it? Maybe we can do a trade. I'm like, okay, sure. So I get up there, and I'm looking at a few things, and I have that same thing where I'm like, okay, well, this is, this is 240 volts.
Yeah.
And I know,
Yeah.
it's like a low voltage control circuit, and then 240 volts to control. There's a heater and a motor and pump basically. And
so what you're saying is bare hands, nothing but straight metal tools and no plastic, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Just dive right in while it's
Barefoot. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yep.
So with one foot in the bath.
Yeah, of course.
So I took a look at it, and I figured out what was wrong. And I get the guy on the phone, which was great, great customer service, and get him on the phone. And I was like, "Hey, when you guys did this, did you And he's like, "Oh, you're right." I'm like, "Okay, cool, all right." I'll just and I got some replacement fuses, and I fixed it, and we got it running. But then because they'd gotten an all new, it used to have like a full on computer, like a regular kind of a desktop computer, like a hard drive and everything, a tower kind of a thing. And now it's more like a tablet, with the touch screen and everything.
Which makes sense, right?
And yeah, it had a touch screen before, but it was very limited. Now everything's just in the screen itself. But there was something wrong then with the flow wasn't right. It just wasn't. It would go from you'd kind of barely feel any difference from 1 to 5, and then all of a sudden it was 10.
So would you call it a robust flow?
Yes, It was a robust flow at 10. And people were, not everyone likes 10, and the experience wasn't quite what it should be. And so they said, hey, they think it might be this valve. And so now I'm looking at this thing going, okay, I have never, I don't know what this thing is. So I have to drain it. So I read the great instructions again. It was they clearly provide their customers all the ways that they can fix it themselves if they want. Yeah. So I read the instructions that says drain it and this and that, and I'm like, have you guys done this before? They're like, oh yeah, we, blah, blah, blah. And I guess one former employee would be the one that always did it. And so I was like, okay, so I figured out what it was going to be. I drained it, did it, lifted it up, put the stuff together, got it all. Okay, here we go. Looks good. Put it down, fill it up. You have to put distilled water in it. So we had to get 30 gallons of distilled water and pouring the distilled water in there. And all of a sudden I'm like, there's a leak.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh no. So I quickly, I'm like, and I look underneath and it's cracked. The tub is cracked.
That's no good.
Yeah. And,
time to get some Flex Seal, slap it right on there. You're right back in business.
So I quickly got all the water out of it, and then it was like, okay.
You didn't even have to do that Flex Seal. You do it right in the water. I've seen it in the commercials.
Right, exactly. I see it on TV.
Yeah.
As seen on TV.
I really can't knock that stuff. I have used it, and it does seem to work pretty decent for certain things. So,
Well, so then these things are expensive. I mean,
I'm sure.
Brand new, $18,000, $25,000, $26,000, depending on what model you get.
That's more than I thought. Wow.
Yeah, they have a trade-in program that maybe you could spend $14,000, and then they reuse it. Because for the most part, it's a fiberglass. Now I know these things inside and out.
Right.
And it's basically a fiberglass tub. Made, and then it's got a little track in it, and water gets pumped through some jets, and it's got just a rubber, like a membrane, and then you've got a nice pad you lay on. It's got a pump and some stuff. It's actually pretty simple device.
Yeah. And
and they're like, well, it turns out we can fix it. Can you come over? And that was right when I got COVID. So they had to wait until I got better.
Yeah.
And Nicole's like, hey, can you might come up here and still look at this? I'm like, okay. So I come up and they just have this tube of epoxy, and I'm reading what's in it, and I'm like, oh, I know this stuff. It's stuff I used to use in my jet ski days.
Yeah.
So I quickly sent him an email. I'm like, okay, this is what I would do, and he's like, that's what you need to do. I'm like, all right, but now I'm like, this makes me nervous.
Yeah.
It's one thing to fix my own jet ski.
Right.
It's another thing to take a Dremel, and grind into this tub of water, and then I'm going to. And now, granted, the product that they gave me, I mean, it's bomber stuff.
Yeah.
I knew this stuff was going to be stinky and it was going to work great.
It was deluxe Flex Seal.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
definitely. So I got it all done, and water tested it, and I'm just doing all my due diligence and everything, and but then after that, it was like, then this thing went wrong, and then this thing went wrong, and so I did a lot of after hours, and that's why I wasn't.
Because last time we recorded, you were like, I just got home, to where like you could have jumped on, but you were like, but I'm exhausted. And it was like, well, that's no fun, like we don't want that either, because we don't want you. I mean, it's already every time we record, there's a risk of Jen nodding out on us. I can't have both the co-hosts nodding out. If I'm going to talk to myself, I'll just do it myself.
Yeah, I had some 12-hour days, and in the end, when it was all said and done, now the thing's working great. Last week was hilarious. There was still something that didn't seem right, but I didn't know what it was. And finally, Nicole said, "Yeah, it's just not starting every time." I'm like, "Okay." I'm like, "It's definitely not a loose wire." I opened up the panel, and I was like, electrical things where when the person who needs to see it do its thing, it doesn't do its thing.
Of course, yeah.
Well, it did its thing right in front of me. Oh. Sparks came flying out. I'm like, okay, normal. I don't think sparks are supposed to fly out of that.
Perfectly normal.
And so I got my flashlight. I'm like, oh, I see what the problem is. This little contact has gotten a little crooked in the spring.
Oh.
So I pulled a little contact out, and the spring just vanished. Just gone. Like, I could not find the spring. And it wasn't like an itty bitty little eyeglasses screw size
or like
spring.
one in a pen or something. Yeah.
It was a decent sized spring.
Right.
And Nicole's helping me, and I'm just like, I don't know what happened to it. I seriously didn't know what happened to it. I was like, this is impossible. It was there, and then it was just gone.
Right.
Like when I got home, I took my clothes off carefully, thinking like it might have gotten went just by some fluke.
I've had that happen where I've taken something apart and had a little spring or a nail or something like that jump in, like a fold of your clothes or something like that. So yeah.
So the next day I was like, I got old ones of these. I stole a spring off of something else and I fixed it, and everything's working great again. It feels great. But the good news is they're like, I'm willing to do a trade. I'm even going to give you an invoice. And so I invoiced for all the time. So I got 11 free chiropractic visits till the end of the year.
Nice.
So I'm like, sweet, I can get some new glasses on my cafeteria plan. So I'll get something for it.
Cool.
In the end. And the other thing was, man, this is just this part of this story relates to the crazy life. So the whole time I'm working on this thing, right? 12-hour days. I'd even gone in on weekends to do all the, because I didn't want to be grinding into fiberglass and with a Dremel while they had patients there.
That'd have been all right.
Yeah.
They wouldn't mind at all.
Like the day that I did the epoxy, like Nicole walked in, she's like, holy wow. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty bad in here. I'm like, luckily it wasn't, it's like one of those products that it smells worse than it actually is.
Yeah.
It's like super it evaporates so fast, and like even though it smells bad, I don't feel high or anything.
Yeah.
But like I'm like, you might want to keep that door closed for a day.
Yeah.
But this whole time I've been having this problem with my hip. And I'd at work, I'd be walking along, and all of a sudden it just felt like this shooting pain.
Yeah, fine.
And mind you, in all this time that I'm working there, I haven't made any appointments.
Yeah.
And then finally, I'd gone right around the time I got back from Seattle, and that's when all this stuff kind of happened. Mm. Oh yeah, because it was I had COVID, so I couldn't. So when I got back, I went for an appointment. Hey, do you think you can help fix it? Yeah. So over this course of this month, and I keep having this problem, and I've had the hip thing going on for a while now, and so I finally I do a regular visit. And Aaron's Dr. Stern's like, are anything? I'm like, no, just the usual neck, blah blah blah, because that had kind of felt like it was bad. And he's like, really? That you sure? I'm like, yeah, that's about it. He's like, okay, well, stand there. He's like, take your belt off, take this off. He's doing some measurements on me and this and that, and he goes, your hip. And as soon as he said hip, I'm like, oh yeah. I've got this weird thing where it feels like I've got this total catch. He's like, okay. He's like, lay here, this pop. All of a sudden, he's like, is that better? I was like, oh, holy wow. Like, okay. He's like, all right, let's do this. He has this it's like a little mini jackhammer in his hand.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, grr, 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 around my hip joint.
Yeah.
And I get up, and that was the ticket. All of a sudden, I was like, wow. Like, I had all this motion and this movement, and I'm just like, I am an idiot. Like, it's amazing how I still have this thing in my head about, like, oh, it's nothing, it'll just pass.
Right? Yeah.
Oh, it's just a little ache.
Right. And that's...
Or, oh, I'm a little stiff or a little tight.
I talked to my therapist about that because remember I mentioned how I'm, like, when I went in for, like, my Social Security interview, that exact thing was what was going on in my head, is to where I don't, like, complain about my mental health stuff. I don't bring up in therapy. I minimize my stuff so much that I, like you were just saying, you just dismiss it without even realizing you're dismissing it. And the way your chiropractor can do his job the best is when you tell him what's bothering you, even if it's a little hitch. That way he can go, oh, well, yeah, right?
Think about how bad it must have been.
Right?
He looked at me, walked in, and thought that there was something wrong.
Yeah.
And he was right. And just like our therapist will, like, talk to us and be like, is everything okay? And you're like, yeah, everything's fine. And then you start talking a little more, and they're just like, and you're like, oh, yeah, this thing happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, okay, and I just sat there. I was like, I am my worst freaking enemy still.
Yeah, it's something I still fight with. Like, when I go in for therapy, I very much try to, like, this is what I need. This is what is going on. Let's see how you react to it, kind of a thing, And that I found that is helping, but I still have that, it's not that big a deal. I don't need to talk to, like when my therapy gets rescheduled every time, I'm like, that's okay. I can do without it. Inside, I'm like, no, I need this, but it's like, why am I not vocalizing how important this is to me and how much I need this? You know what I mean? Like, cause they always tell you, like, well, I know that's a long way out. If you need it sooner, call and I'll see if I can find something for you. And I never call. Like, oh, no, it's no big deal. I'll wait 4 months for my next appointment, kind of a thing. And
even knowing how much better you'll feel afterwards.
Right, exactly. And it's like, why wouldn't you, first of all, why wouldn't you just call to see if you could get it moved up at all? Even if it's a month, a week, a day, but it's like, I feel like it's that, like, in my head, it's because of all those years of, it could be worse. It could be this. You're fine. You're not an immediate, you're not, like, in my head, I think it's, the scale is so all or nothing, right? That it's like, oh, do you feel like harming yourself? No? Then you'll be okay. That's basically the scale. It's like 0 or 10. There's no, there's no gray. And it's like you, right? Like, that was bothering you. So clearly it's on the scale.
Yeah, clearly.
And like you said, if he saw it, it must have been way worse than you. So in your head, it was probably like 3 or 4, but it was probably more like a 5 or 6 or 7.
It seriously was, yeah, because, like, I would get onto stairs and suddenly not be able to move, or it would just hurt. Like, because it was even funny. He's like, it feels like, like a stabbing pain going down. I'm like, yeah, that's what it feels like. It's like someone's just stabbing me right in the leg. He's like,
yeah.
It's just your neck, huh? That's all that's going on. It's just your neck. And and then I'm like, oh yeah, I also got a little tendonitis in my thumb.
Right, now you're opening the floodgates. You're like, I stubbed my toe the other day.
And I'm walking out of the place, walking normally for the first time in I don't know how long.
Yeah.
And it's so weird how I'm just like, a lot of it, what it is it's already bad habits. So I attribute that to it.
Yeah.
When it might not be my bad habits. There might be something wrong.
Yeah.
And, I've been going regularly because you said, this isn't going to just go away right away. It's probably going to go back a little bit. And so this last week,
he just wants you to burn up them visits is all it is. No, I'm kidding.
Hey, I'm burning them up, man. Yeah. I'm like stoked.
You like show up every day. He's like, this isn't how this works.
Yeah. So this was great. So I was like, and I look down and, like, they keep a busy schedule. Yeah. I mean, it's appointment packed. And I look down and I'm like, so, what do you got, Nicole, after I got the bed fully fixed? And she's like, oh, I can get you in here. And she had this, like, cross line. And I'm like, oh, you're like the airline holding some seats back just in case. And she's like, yes, I am like the airlines.
Yeah.
But she's all, I'll call you if I have a cancellation. I was like, great. So she calls me. I go in there. And this time I advocated for myself. So I'm like, okay, I still have a little bit of pain here. And so he does one thing and nothing happens. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's still there. And I'm just putting my faith in him. And so he says, all right, we're getting up close and personal. And he's got me in that, like, full body hug, got my freaking leg and just tries to, basically just pop it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, nope, not there. He's like, all right, I got one more thing. And so, they
he
have
gets out a sledgehammer.
Seriously, yeah. It's where the table has the drop feature on it. So he can, like drop you. So
yeah.
He sets that up. I'm hanging over the edge. I'm like, my head's on a thing, and he's like, he grabs in there and he just really, and I was like, and he's like, all right, let's do it one more time. And as soon as he hit it, it was like right where I was feeling a little bit of discomfort, stood up, walking normal again.
That's wild.
It was gone.
It's amazing how violent
instantly.
How violent chiropractors are, but then you're like, oh yeah, I feel great.
Like a 10-minute visit.
Yeah.
And instant relief, like unbelievable relief. And it lasts. Some of the stuff, if it's been in a bad, obviously our muscles and everything, it's all geometry. It adapts to it. I was just talking to our local tennis pro over at work about this, where he's like, yeah, my patella's off a little bit, and so I got like some weird muscle development, where it's compensating.
Yeah. Yep.
And he's like, I know that's not helping me, and it's right, because your body adapts to it, and so it has to adapt back.
Right.
It has to go back to the old paradigm. And so, I know that it'll always take a few visits, and I'm going to feel better. I mean, I still, I have lots of arthritis. I have lots of damage.
Yeah.
I have all sorts of issues from my jet skiing and this and that. Like my elbow has been catching and stuff. But again, it was like, oh yeah, my elbow's been catching. Well, give me your freaking arm, dummy.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, oh yeah, my resources. I have resources. They're there for me.
Right. It's different if you don't, like if you're there for an hour and it's like 59 minutes and it's like, I still got like 4 more things. It's like, well, you pick and choose maybe like, what do I need worked on the most? Like when I go in therapy, it's like, I know I have 45 minutes. So I can't just be talking about everything. It's like, I got to kind of hit the big stuff. And if there's time to delve into the little here and there's, then I do, but otherwise it's like, well, I'll just file those for next time and maybe I'll bump them up the scale so that they're more of a priority next time or something. So in that case, maybe, but otherwise, yeah, you're right. It's like, if you're in there, it's like, why wouldn't you just say, hey, this is bugging me too? Like, that's what he's there for. He's, that time is yours. It's, paid for,
Well, that's it.
So.
Yeah. And then the other thing, like my work, I had a discovery of something that I knew something was wrong a month and a half ago. I knew there was something wrong. And I just was like, okay, again with that whole, well, we've got some new things here, and maybe that's nothing bad, and maybe whatever. Then finally, when it has to do with our air conditioning unit, this thing is it's got its own room, it's huge, and we have to monitor the amount of electrical use so we can bill the health club differently, and so separately. Well, I realized that our numbers were completely off. I mean, totally off. And I just don't know enough about the system. So I get over there, and this thing is, the voltage isn't particularly high. It's the current that's high. And, so they say the current kills you. And when I'm talking high current, we're talking, it's called electrical. It's called 3-phase. So there's 208, basically it's 200 volts per phase. And each phase it's 500 amps, basically max.
So a little tickle, yeah.
Yeah. So, and for most people in their house, your breakers are 15 or 20. Mm-hmm. Your dryer might be 30. This thing is 10 times that.
Right.
Easily. And 3 times over. It is, and I was like, okay, I need to open up this panel. And there's this thing called arc flash where I can't describe it. It basically, it burns people to death in like a second.
Oh.
It's basically electricity shooting out of a panel.
Oh, okay.
And grounding out on you, and it's massive heat and everything, and it's something to be very afraid of.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I shut the system down, and our new stuff has got all these new sensors, and it took hours for it to come back on.
Oh, jeez.
And so that was a 12-hour day on like a Friday.
Oh.
And the health club's getting hot and everything. And I got to see what was in there, but I know nothing about the stuff. So in the meantime, while I'm waiting, I'm doing some research, And I have no idea. Is this put together correct or not? I don't know. And of course, it's on Thursday. It's like I want to go in on Friday and work, but I'm done for the week. I've already got overtime.
Yeah.
So I had to wait until Sunday. I get in there on Sunday, and before the thing's even, first thing in the morning, before it's even running, I got in there, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, okay, this is what's wrong with this. And in the meantime, I've gotten a hold of the company that did their work, because I'm just like, I didn't touch it.
Yeah.
You guys took the whole thing apart. Like, do you have photos? And luckily I found a photo from one of my coworkers where it showed that they took it all apart for sure.
Okay.
Like, all of this equipment was removed. None of it was there. So it's completely on them. And I got I did some stuff on Sunday. It didn't work. So I'm like, okay, I got one thing left to do on Monday. Got it working on Monday. No problem. Our guy, our mechanic from Train, called up first thing in the morning when he saw the email. And I'm like, I think I got it. I'm like, I think I'll figure out how to do the billing and stuff. But it was, on one hand, it was frustrating because my gut was telling me something and I didn't listen, a while ago. And then it was like, you know what? This feels good that I fixed this thing. Now, should I have? Probably not. Because there's one thing I don't like to get. I get comfortable around electricity.
Yeah.
Like and same thing with this tub. I'm afraid at first, but the more I'm around it, the more comfortable I get.
Yeah.
And it kind of has to be that way for me to do my job.
Yeah.
There's certain things you have to troubleshoot things when it's fully electrified.
Yeah. My uncle was a plumber and electrician, and different times when he was monkeying around with stuff for us, like like putting in a new outlet for the dryer, or different stuff, upgrading things over time. And I'd ask him occasionally and be like, aren't you afraid of getting like shocked? And he's like, I've been shocked a bunch of times, and he's like, it's part of it. He's like you were just saying though, he's like, there's part of this job you can't do with all the power shut off. You have to have it on sometimes. And he's like, unfortunately, you do everything you're supposed to do and things can still go sideways. And, he's like, all you can do is pray for the best, basically. I was like, that's real comforting, but
yeah. Well, and you follow the rules, you follow the protocols.
Yep, exactly.
And that's the best you can do. And,
yep.
Fortunately, this case, things worked out. And then it was funny. It's like, it still wasn't right, meaning I had half the equipment hanging out of the box. So I went to go reconfigure it. And then, of course, it didn't work again. I'm like, oh, but in the meantime, like all of our elevators are being rebuilt. So that's, when you got people living in a building that's 5 floors and, it's going to be a week. And they didn't show up until like a month before this to go down the list of all the things. We've had this contract signed since last fall. And it took them till a month before start for them to come in and tell us what other things we needed to get done. And I'm just like, you know how it's like right now, getting parts shipped in, let alone people scheduled.
Yeah.
It's like, we'll be lucky if we get this, this done right. But everything is just kind of worked out. And even the most stressful days, there's days where I just get up, I sit down with Omar, my coworker, and I go, okay, shall we throw a dart at the wall? Because we're just so far behind. What do you think? And I'm just super grateful for everybody on the team, all of our coworkers. Even like one of my coworkers, his niece just died tragically all of a sudden, and like it messed him up bad.
Sure.
And he took a bunch of days off, and there was one day he came back in afterwards. It was before he'd taken days off, and he got into this ice maker, and I'm just like, how many hours has he spent on this thing?
Right.
And the next day I was asking Omar, and I wasn't really being critical, but I kind of was. And all of a sudden it dawned on me. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I was in grief, I want simple, easy things to occupy my time.
Sure.
You know what? It doesn't matter how long it took him. I know what to bill for this. I don't, and just that again, that I'm so grateful that my tools kick in. All right. No, my initial thought wasn't about him being in grief.
Yeah.
I was kind of doing my job. It's like, well, how long are you going to spend up there working on this ice maker?
Right.
And then it's like, well, no. And within seconds, it's like, no, it is completely okay. Whatever time it took. And it's so awesome to come on this podcast and talk about how much I love my work. You know, I just love my work. And even in the roughest times, it's like everything, it's okay. We're going to get it done. We're going to, everything's going to work out, whatever little bumps and hurdles. And it's great to feel that. And it just gives me, it's that I know, I don't know if it was on Salty Language you're talking about it, or if it was on Crazy Life, but you were just talking about the whole idea of you sometimes have to go through something to realize that you can get through it.
Yeah.
And I continue to have that experience, and it continues to reinforce how amazing this is. It's like, yeah, we get through things.
Right.
We get through things.
Well, and two, it's like you were just saying about with your coworker, right? It's like, had you not, I mean, we all go through grief at some point, but had you not gone through whatever it is that allowed, put you in that scenario, you may not have that empathy for him now.
Oh yeah.
And it's even though, a lot of times when we're going through bad situations and we're always, questioning, like, why, what did I do to deserve this? Or what lesson am I being taught? It's like, sometimes the lesson is years later, and you go, oh, because I went through it, I can see other people and maybe offer them a hand through it, or be kind when I see they're going through it, or whatever. It's very important. And, it's not easy to recognize, though. Without tools, sometimes it's easy to just gloss over that stuff and move through it.
Well, it's all a matter of are you self-centered or other-centered?
Yeah.
And I had a moment of self-centered, and it shifted right away.
Yeah.
My one of my oldest friends, Brendan, his dog died tragically and horribly last week. I mean, it was a brand new dog to him.
Oh,
Yeah.
And
And it wasn't a young puppy. He'd taken this dog in, and this was the place where it was beyond empathy. Like the minute I saw the text message, I started crying because it's still very fresh to me, and this is one of my best friends.
Yeah, sure.
And I got on the phone with him, and I like, it hurt. It hurt a lot, and
Sure.
I can't stop thinking about it and thinking about him, because I know what he's going through. I know everything, and he's already in a he's already in a tough place right now in life, and this kind of stuff doesn't help. But
No.
I'll tell you, we talk about the things that you need to do to get out of depression spirals or this kind of stuff, and how very often we don't do them, even though we know we need to do them, we don't do them.
Yeah.
And I would reach out every once in a while, and all of a sudden there'd be a phone call, and he would tell me about what he processed that day. And he was like, okay, this is how I'm feeling. Why am I feeling this way? Because this doesn't seem right. And he processed through it. And then what does he do? He calls somebody and talks about it. And I at one point in the conversation, I stopped and I said, I just need to tell you right now, you are telling depression, screw you, man.
Yeah.
Because depression doesn't want you to process.
Right.
Depression wants you to avoid this, and depression definitely doesn't want you calling friends.
No, it wants you to ruminate on it.
Yes,
Yeah.
and isolate.
Right.
And dive deeper in it.
Sure.
And I'm just like, you are winning. I know this hurts a lot, but if you can take anything from it. And then my sister called me, and my sister doesn't call me, so it was one of those moments where as soon as I picked up the phone, I'm like, hello. She's like, everything's okay. Don't worry. We're totally like, we'll text or email before we call. And we were talking, and I brought up what happened, and she said, we started, because they're looking at getting a dog also, and I said what happened, and she has rabbits, and she had something similar with Jax, where it's like, I'll see tomorrow, and the next thing you know, the rabbit's dead. And for me and with Jackson, there was a lot of guilt, and she was telling me about this therapist, counselor, whatever, someone that she watches on, it was on a YouTube video or something, and she'd done a seminar and was talking about that. Like we always say, is to try to find purpose in something. What can you find in this to know that some good came of it, or whatever it is. And she was saying that a lot of that guilt and that grief is, especially if it's something that we've never been through before, is the way that you're going to know you're never going to do that again.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
Is that what you get from this, that feeling, is you will never do this again. It's kind of like almost like a pay it forward thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you messed it up. well, this is your body telling you, like, there's nothing you can do about what happened.
Right.
What happened. But you can take this and you can pay it forward for the next time.
Yeah.
And don't do it again.
Right.
And at least you get to take something from it.
Right.
And make an improvement, make a change, learn, and get out of that guilt cycle. And which it just does no good, and so that's about kind of what's gone on for me. Music's been great. Oh, big thing. My old singer, we got together and played last week.
Nice.
And the first song, I just burst into tears. I mean, it's been 8 years.
Yeah.
It's actually been 9, probably.
Wow,
her kids are 8 years old.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
That's awesome. You guys
amazing.
Got to get together finally after all this time.
Yeah, it was a big deal.
Are you doing? Is
really
it like new stuff or stuff you had done before? Or
we're gonna do a new project.
Okay.
Yeah, we're gonna do something with a different focus. But for the get together, I just brought a bunch of old stuff in.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I just said I'm just gonna bring my acoustic guitar over, and
Yeah.
Dave had his drums there, but that wasn't the point.
Right.
We just played through some old songs, and wow, I mean, it was something. I mean, it was like, whew, wow, I've missed this so much.
Yeah. I imagine.
Big time. Yeah, it's, and some people are going to be excited. We got some video of it last weekend that I need a little post on social media, like, so this happened. And yeah, so that's about it. I had another thing with, a project that I have going on all the time where I kept putting something off I would work on it, but then I would get frustrated and I'd put it down and then I'd pick it up again. And it was funny when I finally, I was getting called on it, and deservedly so.
Right.
Like I deserve, like, the one person apologized to me and I said, don't, I deserved that. Every bit of it. I earned it. It was like, trust me. But it was wild was the next day. It was that sense of like, wow, I really love to torture myself, don't I?
Right.
Like, what is wrong with me? Like, here I am. I've got a forest fire of clutter in the back of my head right now that I'm feeding logs.
Yeah.
Because here, have some burden you don't even know is there.
Yeah.
Like, it was every night, clearly it was weighing on me that I should be doing this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when it was finally done, it was like, oh, wow. Like it's quiet.
It's so amazing how that is and how much
and I'm just
we
like,
fight it.
Again,
Yeah.
just glutton for punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So, we have some wins. We have some lessons,
Yeah.
It's there's no finish line.
Right. That's right. That's right. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because that's actually kind of, for me, one of the things that I've been, really wrestling with. I posted a thing on Twitter the other night that was kind of like, we've talked plenty of times about the 5-minute phone call and how we'll put it off and put it off and put it off. And like, I still have not called the therapist that I got referred to talk to test me further for ADHD. I still have not done that. And I just cannot, I just, even, and there's days where it's not even I'm sleeping too late or something, which, sometimes is an issue. It's more of there's days I've been up and just can't seem to do it. And it kills me because it's like, I know I'm not alone in this, as we've talked about it, but also I know tons of people suffer from this, the anxiety of that, just picking up your phone and whatever. And I know there's an element in mine, right? Like where it's that kind of fear, but then there's other fears creeping in, building the wall, because it's, I'm afraid, like a lot of things I've called for treatment over the years to where, oh, sorry, we don't take your insurance, and it's like, now I got to find somebody else and hope they're not 3 hours away or whatever. As a couple times things I've had to go to have been like 2 hours from here. And there's someone who's in town, literally 5 or 10 minutes from me that does the same thing, but they just don't take my insurance. So I have to go hours away, So there's just that kind of stuff, but it's just, you don't do it. Then like, I'll look at my note on my desk here that says psych appointment and, to remind me to call and make it. And I'll look at that. And then that immediate you know, like I just start throwing the logs on the fire for the guilt train, you know, and just start beating myself up just left and right. Or, come on, you got to do this, blah, blah, blah. And then the next day, lather, rinse, repeat. You know, it's just so, honestly, it's exhausting. It's so exhausting
it really is.
To just beat yourself up like this. And it's like even saying it sounds stupid because you know how illogical it is. It's like, just call. Boom, it's over. That's it. That's the end of it. 5 minutes.
Yep.
Even if they don't, whatever, then you call you talk to your doctor's office and get a different doctor to referral, or you get a hold of your insurance and find a doctor through them who does it, you know, whatever. And it's like, that's the worst part is like, you know, so many people over the years, you know, when you tell them what, you know, I can't do this or I can't do that. And then, you know, and they're like, why? It's so easy. Just do it. And then it's over with. And I'm like, I wish, like, that's the problem, you know? And, I've really been just dealing with it a lot lately, you know, and it's so exhausting and annoying. And thank goodness, like, I've got therapy in, Monday, I think it is, finally, after, man, it's probably been 4 months or so, because my last 2 appointments, I completely forgot about one of them, and the other one had to be rescheduled, because that's when my mom was going through some stuff, so I had to move that one. But the one after that, I got my days mixed up, and like I thought it was on Friday and it was on Thursday, and totally forgot. So I'm very much looking forward to getting back in, you know, to that and getting that going again and trying to make sure I can get back on a regular cycle. I'll tell you, one of the things that really stinks is that because there's so many more people, because of COVID or whatever it is, you know, like where I go, you know, the therapist told me she's got like 3 times the caseload that she had pre-COVID. You know, so now if you miss an appointment, you can't get back in and like, oh, I got you in a couple weeks usually, you know, or 3 weeks, or it's 2 months sometimes. And it really, really stinks. And it's like, I'm glad people are going to therapy, but, you know, it's like when you have a favorite restaurant and all of a sudden someone else discovers it and puts it in the local newspaper or something, or on the news. Now everybody goes there and you're like, you know, I'm glad the place is doing great, but I want to be able to, you know, go in and enjoy the place, you know. It's similar in that regard. It's like I said, I'm glad there's people seeking help, but also it's like, dang it, you know, now it's harder for me to get the help I need. So it's tough to, like you were saying about the selfish moment of selfishness versus you know, thinking of other-centered, yeah. You know, because it's like everything in me wants to be like, you know, me, you know, like, but also, like I said, I'm very glad people are getting help because, you know, if they need it, I'm glad more are getting help. So it's a real tough fight on that sometimes too. But, you know, overall, I'm more happy about it than anything. I just don't like that it affects me negatively, of course, you know, just how dare they? Don't they know who I am?
Yeah, exactly.
Who I am. Yeah. They're like, yeah, you're one of this many patients we have, and you will be treated as such. I'm like, okay, then. Thank you for treating me fairly.
So true.
You know, I mean, it's about it, right? So, yeah, that's, you know, because I just have this constant fight in my head about, you know, the feeling useless, not really doing anything with life. You know, I live in an area where, like I've said before, I know I can get schooling for free, but I also know that right now I'm just not in the mindset that I think I can do it. You know, it's like removing mental health from it. Yeah, I could do it. I know I can, whatever I set my mind to school-wise, I'm sure I can do it, you know. But as far as actually being able to do it and be reliable enough to where, you know, I mean, heck, I go out and water the vegetables for my mom, our tomato plants and whatever. And I can't even do that every day, and that's a 5-minute gig, or a 10-minute gig. It's so, I'm working toward it, but it's like, I think I need to get this psych appointment dealt with first, because I think finding things out one way or another and figuring a little more out there will help me down the road. Cause I also think if this is a situation where I am dealing with ADHD, I need to get better tools to do schoolwork, because as my mind sets now, I can't read for very long without my brain just, flying away like a bag in the breeze, and that's not so much because, one of the degrees I'm looking at is like accounting, and you kind of can't daydream while you're doing accounting. You kind of got to be present and precise. So, maybe that's not for me then, I don't know. So that's, like I said, I feel like I kind of need a little more movement on the other, to help me one way or the other. If it's not ADHD, it's like, okay, well, I still have some issues with starting things and, some executive functions that I need some tools and help with, so, okay, let's direct the therapy stuff that way and work on that or whatever. So I think that's kind of where I'm at right now. And, I really, really wish I could just schedule this stuff online. I really wish more doctors' offices would just let you do everything online. Like the eye doctor I go see, they literally have one of those. I forgot what it is. It was popular for a while, to where I've seen podcasters use it too, to where they'll be like, hey, we'd like you to be a guest. Here's a calendar of our openings. Pick one, basically. And you pick where you're going to schedule in there. And it's like, I wish they could do that for, like, doctor's appointments, where you go, oh, okay, here's where you're open. Yes, that one. Click. Fill out my information online. We're ready to go, kind of a thing. So,
you need a personal assistant.
I do. I really do. It actually, like, all joking aside, it would be nice to kind of have somebody who could do this stuff for me, and not because I'm lazy, but just because it would relieve so much stress for me. The anxiety and stuff. But I also know that I have to do this stuff for myself. There is that element of I need to push through the anxiety and do this for myself as well. Because, every little battle you let anxiety win, it's another body on the pile, and so that's why I push through usually. But boy, this time I've really not done it. It's probably been a couple months or so, or 3 months since I was told about that. So I, really need to make that happen. So I got a dental appointment next Friday. So finally, because good gravy, that was a whole other thing. But, so that'll be nice and anxiety inducing also.
It
won't be bad. It's just they're just doing the X-rays, and then they go, okay, here's what you need. That's all it's going to be. Yeah. So it's not. They're not even going to do any work, but it's still anxiety inducing, because I'm always afraid of that. Well, you need this. I'm like,
yeah. Mine last week, I was in and I was out, and I'm like, okay, that was weird. I'm so used to thousands of dollars of punishment.
That's what I'm afraid of. Yeah.
Well, I think I'm in the cycle of where I get, a few years of relief and then wham.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, and also when I was in there, a couple weeks ago, the dentists that were there before when I went there are both gone. So it's a new dentist, and she's super nice, really, really nice, but it's still new doctor. On the upside with dentist, it's not the same as a family doctor or a therapist for me, because with a dentist, they can just kind of look at the records and the x-rays and go, okay, here's what you need. Boom, boom, boom. Whereas the family doctor, they got to really dig to, do you have a history of things? And, with the therapist, it's like, I now have to tell this person my life story. you know? And it's like, I just want to start writing it all out. And then if I get a new therapist, just be like, here's the Cliff Notes, you know, catch up. By the time I see you next time, we can dig in. But yeah, like I said, with dentist, it's not. And like I said, she was very nice, and the fact that they couldn't do the full X-ray package because my insurance wouldn't pay for it until 2 more weeks passed. And she could not have been nicer about, I'm so sorry, we wasted your time. And I'm like, I live 5 minutes down the road. It's fine. And listen, anytime you go into the dentist and they tell you, like you were just saying, kind of like you walk out without a paper that says, oh, you need like 19 fillings or some, you're usually like, whoo.
Yeah, anytime there's not an appointment within the next 2 weeks.
Now, I have an appointment, but it's literally, they took some x-rays when I was there. It's just going to be to take the other, I forgot how many, and then that's it, basically.
Yeah.
Then they'll look at them, and then we'll, here's the treatment plan, schedule the cleaning, which is honestly the part I wish I could have just done last time when I was in there, because I'm like, you can't just do a cleaning since you already have this time budgeted, can you? And they were like, no. I was like, dang it, because as much as it bothers me to even say, it's like I haven't had a cleaning since pre-COVID because my appointment was scheduled at March. COVID shut everything down, and then my dentist appointment was shut down for a long, long time. And then once they opened back up, they were packed because everybody's trying to catch up on getting their kids and their own, dental care. So I was just like, every time I call, I couldn't get through. And then when I did get through, they were like, well, it's going to be, like 6 months. And I'm like, so, I kind of just checked out on it. And, I'm glad I finally at least made that phone. Well, I didn't even make the phone call. I was in the office. I went upstairs where the dental place is and was like, I need an appointment. So it's weird. I'll do that so much faster than a phone call. Like if this therapist was like right around the corner from me, I would have already had this appointment scheduled. I would have just went and had it done. It's the phone. I hate getting on the phone. I don't know why. Like I said, I hate even calling for pizza. If they have an app or a website I can order from, 100% of the time we'll order from there first. Unless it costs like prohibitively more money than I would.
Yeah.
But otherwise, like if it's like $2 or $3 more to call and do it, or to do it online, I would just be like, okay, like it's worth it's what I said. And it's like when you call a pizza place, they generally don't give you any attitude. They're like, hey, what do you want? How do you want? Do you want to come get it, or you want us to throw it at you from the car? And that's it, like it's super simple, no harm. Nah, I don't want anything to do with it. Like if I could just turn the phone part of my phone off, I'd be so happy. Like just never use it again. Just text, do things online. But unfortunately, that isn't how it works. So I guess I gotta just pull up my big boy jeans and take care of business or something, or however it's said. But on the upside, I think I mentioned it to Jen last time her and I recorded, but I've still been noticing this, is that going out just for those few minutes a day to water the plants and stuff I'm really finding the zen in it, even if it's just for a few minutes. Like I said, I'm not like staring at my phone while I'm doing it. Phone's in the pocket. I'm listening to kids playing in the neighborhood, or just the sounds of the neighborhood basically. And like today when I was out there, I went to water the one, I think it's a lilac bush that my mom has, and there was a praying mantis on it. Oh wait, praying mantis? Yeah, I think it was a praying mantis. So I took a picture of that, and I've seen a couple grasshoppers out there, and and it's like, oh, cool. Like I went to water one of the plants, and one just jumped off that onto our hose and just kind of sat on the hose for a few minutes. And then when it was funny though, because like when I was done, I noticed as I was walking back, it jumped back onto the bush. So I was like, oh, the rain's over, I can go back in there. But just it's interesting. Just those couple minutes, it's just like a little bit of a reset. Even in something so just mundane and not really it's not really anything. It's just watering some plants and picking off the vegetables that are, ready to come inside. And, it's been kind of nice, actually. So.
Yeah, I've been enjoying that too myself. I get home from work and go outside, out in the yard, do some watering, this and that. It's just like, I don't want to do it at first. And it's like, no, go out and do it. And there's just something about it. And it's like, I'm not at work. It's like kind of, shifting stuff in a way.
Right. It's just kind of a nice, and I've talked with my neighbors a couple of times while I'm out there, because they let their dog out their back patio or steps to, when they tie him up outside, because there's more kind of free room to run over there.
Yeah.
And, I don't see him at first, so I go to water the plants. And as soon as I turn the hose on, and it sprays that first time, he starts barking at it, and then I'm like, oh, hey, and I start talking to him for a minute. And I had a moment the other day, and I don't mind dogs, but I don't like anything that charges me,
Yeah.
And that could be human or animal.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're coming in for a hug, I'm backing up probably as you're doing it most of the time, because that's who I am. So if a dog's coming in to say hi, most of the time I'm moving back too. But I went over to get the mail the other day, and this dog was just, he's sitting in the yard. These two women are out there talking, and he sees me, and I can see him from quite a ways away, and I see him, he immediately starts panting, and he's just wiggling his butt. He's wiggling his tail, basically, and he's like, and in my head, I'm going, okay, he's going to come over for sure, unless he's on a leash or something. And I get a little bit closer, and then he starts to move, and the woman, she's like, she's like, he's super nice. He's just going to come over and say hi, and sure enough, he came over, and he's, standing there, and he's wagging his butt, and, I just, I'm like, oh, hey, boy, reached down, and I just start petting him, and he couldn't have been happier. And he sat down while I petted him for a minute, or he kind of got up on, his hind legs and put his paws on me, and I just petted him, and then she's like, get down, and he got down, and so, and then I start, walking a little more toward the mailbox, and he's just right at my side. And she's like, get over here, like, where do you think you're going, And he comes over and sits down. I get the mail, come back.
That's great.
On my way back, I see him start, he sees me, and he starts wiggling his butt again, but as I get up there, she looks at him, and she's like, stay. And he just sat, but he's fighting it hard. Like, he's like, I want to be a good boy, but I want to go get pets, And he gets, finally, and then, as I walk by, I hear her go, good boy. Next thing you know, boom, here he comes. Just comes flying over, to my side again. Didn't jump on me or anything, just right up to my side. And, so I, reached down and petted him again. And then she's like, when I say good boy, that doesn't mean go get him.
Like, go crazy.
Yeah.
Oh,
she's like,
so
get
funny.
over here. And he comes back over because he started walking with me again. She's like, you were not leaving with him, like, and, and she's like, I'm so sorry. I'm like, for what? He was, it made me laugh. I smiled. It was, and I got to pet the dog. It was a nice experience. It's not like he tackled me or stole my mail or something,
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was, just, again, one of those moments where just figured, I'd put the phone in the pocket and walk down to the mailbox and just enjoy that 5-minute stroll, and turned out to be even better than normal. Because, again, normally I just kind of look around at, pay attention to what's going on in our neighborhood, basically. Look at the yards and the flowers and whatever. And, it's so weird how just those 5-minute things can be such a reset. When it feels like, like in 1 minute you can feel super stressed, super heavy, and just 5 minutes of that or breathing or whatever it is, and you can kind of just feel your whole body kind of let go of a lot of that stuff. It's so crazy how much we just grip with like white knuckle grip on some of that stuff. And just how once you let it go, and like you were saying, like even with like your hip, going back to that, right? It's like that hip's bugging you, and it's just a couple minutes, and you're just like, oh man, why didn't I, man, and I almost didn't say something. It's like I almost didn't go get the mail that day, that I had that run in with the dog, and it's like, see, I would have missed that.
That's it. Yeah, it's like it's for me coming home from work. I just want to fall right into the pattern.
Yeah.
and most time I do, and it like, what did I miss out on? What did I, if I wake up the next morning and I don't feel quite rested, or the weird one is I fall into the pattern figuring, okay, I'm just going to relax tonight, and then I have a hard time falling asleep.
Right.
Well, maybe if I'd have gone home and like gotten out of my bubble for a little bit and just, did something a little different.
Right.
Or when took care of one of those little bits of clutter in the back of the head, one of those little things that I'm putting off that I could get done. Like, how would I feel the next day?
Yeah. Or even if it's something you would normally do, because you're right. Sometimes you have those days where you come home and you're like, I'm not doing anything tonight. I'm just going to lay on the couch. Well, maybe playing that video game would have helped your mind kind of unravel a little bit to relax. Because maybe instead of while you're watching that show, you're still kind of half distracted by your day or something. Maybe a video game or playing music or whatever, maybe get your mind out of it a little more or something. It's like even that stuff can be, your routine can be, relaxing and good for you as well. It's interesting how we think that sometimes, like when we think of self-care, a lot of times you think of just nothing. Like, I'm not doing anything. That's my self-care. And it's like, yeah, but you like this or this. That's still a reward. Like playing music or playing a video game or, whatever, watching a movie. It's like, those are things you still enjoy. And you deserve those.
One of the nights that I, was long day, I grabbed one of my old guitars that I hadn't played in forever.
Yeah.
And I got this little headphone amp.
It's funny because you posted a picture of that guitar.
Yeah.
And I immediately was like, oh boy, I don't bought another guitar. I didn't realize that was one you had because I don't remember seeing that guitar. If I have.
It's been buried in a closet because the neck is just out of shape, and I finally got it adjusted to the point where it's like, what I do is I slowly tweak it a little bit.
Oh, take it to the chiropractor with you, let him adjust it.
Kind of, yep, like slight adjustments. And when I picked it up, I'm like, oh, it's feeling, all right, this feels good.
Yeah.
Like, this feels good. And I started playing. New stuff was coming out. And this is an instrument I bought when I was on tour. I still had like my old heavy metal guitars, and so our other guitar player had given me one of his guitars to play, and we got to Chicago, and I went into the music store, and I saw this guitar, and it was the color, and it was called Electric Raspberry, and I'm just like, and it was reasonable in price, and I bought it, and it was like, that was my guitar that I played in Suck in the 90s, and the only thing that sucked is it literally sucked, is it fell out of the back of the van one time and just took a dump on the ground,
Yeah.
And it kind of bums me out. It's got a big old thing. But guess what? Every time I see that ding...
Character, yeah.
I remember when it happened and where it happened and why it happened. And that is a freaking memory I never want to forget.
Right.
That I got to go on tour in a freaking rock and roll band.
Yeah.
That was bucket list stuff.
Right. Yeah, that's really cool. That, like you said, it is, it's that... It was similar to, like, I didn't mention this before, but... was it last week? Yeah, it was my dad's birthday, and this year would have been his 80th birthday. And whatever with milestones and whatnot, but also it's still kind of like 80's not that old, and to not have him around is. But like Facebook, has that. Here's your post from X years ago, and of course on that day, one of the posts I posted was an old picture of him with his birthday cake. And I mean, this is when he was like 20 or teenager or something like that, next to a birthday cake.
Wow.
And I saw it and I was like, dude, I mean, it just dropped me. And I don't mean physically, but like emotionally, man, my eyes just, all of a sudden, man, my allergies kicked up. It was, it was a strong, what it reminded me of is like when you get kicked in the nuts. And I'm not, no hyperbole with that. It reminds you, how your eyes water real heavy sometimes, and you just, that feeling in your gut. And it was just that. And then that kind of left me, and joy came in because it's like, look at this picture though. He's happy. It's his birthday. He's, seemingly okay with the fact that he's getting his picture taken with this cake. This was a good moment for him, and then it kind of, the other stuff kind of washed away. But man, was that a punch. I haven't had a punch like that from it in a while. That's how it was like the first few years, to where basically anything that reminded me of him, and I'd be like, I got to go in the other room for a minute kind of thing, and I don't know why. I don't know if it was because maybe this was potentially would have been a kind of a big birthday, type of thing, or maybe I'm just in a depression thing or whatever it is, but it just really hit me. But, like I said, but then right afterwards, it just kind of washed over me that it was like, yeah, but that picture makes you smile every time you see it. Like, it does remind you he's gone. But it's also a picture you really like. That's why you posted it. Because you were like, this is a picture that I like of my dad. Here it is, Because there's like 4 that I've really posted. I have others, but the 4 that I've posted, it's like one where I'm a little boy and I look so upset. Like, I look like I was cranky as heck. And he's got, he's just standing behind me. He's kind of got his arm over my shoulder, across my chest, and, just, probably just like, all right, kind of a thing, and, but, one was when he bowled when they had the national, it was called the ABC at the time. They had the national, bowling, Congress, or God, what was that called? I don't remember. It was a nationwide, like, bowling tournament, and it was in Toledo. And he bowled in it, and, it's a picture they took, like, everybody who was in it, they take a picture of you. I just remember thinking that was one of the coolest things that my dad was bowling in a national tournament, Little did I know it was probably if you pay your entry fee, you're in kind of a thing. But still, when you're a kid, it's like, my dad's bowling in a national anything, or doing something on a nationwide scale, right? So, and he, I believe he made it past the first cuts. So it wasn't even, it wasn't like he just showed up and went home. He did well enough to stick around for 1 round, I think. And then, it's just the cream of the crop from there. It's the guys that are bowling there were like, and I'm talking like pros were there and stuff. It wasn't just like, oh, this is the local bowling leagues. Those guys get weeded out, but it's still cool for them to be part of it. One of them is, and this will always be my favorite picture of my dad, which is my dad used to put a dress on and call himself Wadeen. And he wasn't that he was a cross-dresser or anything like that. He just did it and just goofed around, just had fun. And I don't know for sure if that's okay now, sensitive, whatever, but at the time, nobody seemed to think anything of it, and everyone seemed to love it when he did it. So there's a picture of my mom sitting on his lap, and he's in his dress, and we always referred to different stuff, and like we'd see a nail polish or something commercial on TV, and I'd be like, hey, that looked good with your dress, and it was just stuff like that. It was there was no malice or anything involved in it, and it wasn't something, like I said, it was something, I mean, seriously, in my life, I think he did it 3 times, that I can think of. It wasn't something he did all the time or anything, but and I can't remember. There's one more that I posted too. But anyway, so those were. Oh, it was the day of my graduation party. I took a picture of him in our side yard, and he's curtsying. Because instead of like bowing, or whenever somebody would pay him a compliment, he would grab the sides of his jeans and just curtsy, and it just would crack me up all the time. And he, just my sister and I kind of had it. My sister, on his birthday, she brought me over like a blueberry ice cream sundae from, actually it's a place her uncle owns, and it's kind of a, hey, here's something nice on a day that sometimes isn't for you.
Yeah.
And she was referring to my dad as a joke, and I apologize if this is language, but he would, for some reason, he would get your attention, and when you'd look, he would lift his shirt and be like, titties! and he used to call my sister at work, and when she would answer, he'd be like, titties! And then just hang up the phone. And, we talk about it now, it's like...
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was just... Like I said, he would just look at you, and he'd be like, Brian, we're like, what? And he'd just lift his shirt, titties! And it was just... for no reason, other than just for the laugh. So, yeah.
That's funny.
And I've thought so many times of calling my sister and doing it to her, but you never know how it'll land, right? Like, I don't want to, maybe make her cry at work, because she, again, there's that bittersweetness to it, to where on one hand, she'd probably find it hilarious, But on the other hand, it is also that old punch in the gut that he's not around, So, anyways, that's yeah. So that was, that was like a couple of days that were. It was weird, It's like the day after, I kind of felt that emotional hangover a little bit from the day before, even though it really wasn't a long feeling of sadness or anything. And, it was nice. Jen reached out to me because, she's been in my life she knew my dad for a long time, when he passed away too. So, she just called or texted me to make sure I was doing okay and whatnot, which was, really nice of her and others did too. It wasn't just her, but I had some others that did too. But it was just really nice that she still did that just to make sure. And, like usual, we kind of had a couple of, hey, remember this type things. And then, so, yeah. Anyway, I've completely derailed the show back to that. But anyway, so, yeah. But, anyone who follows Heno, you should go check his socials out so you can check out that guitar. I don't remember which one you put it on, but...
It usually goes on Instagram and Facebook.
Wasn't thinking. But that's a pretty cool-looking guitar. That's why I thought it was new, because the last... when you got that that sparkly guitar, I thought maybe your new thing was, you're just going to start going with, that's your move now, which would be fine. Whatever. So, yeah.
I have something that I want to share with listeners.
All right.
And this was a guy I know on mostly not through social media, but we knew each other through jet skiing. So we were, we'd see each other at events, nationwide events, but mostly we were in an online, forum, jet ski forum. And this was before social media is what it was today.
Yeah.
And, to be honest, we're definitely different. We're way different people now, like way different. And one thing that sets us apart is he has military background. And from what I remember, he was a medic. I've never really talked to him about it, but he lives in, it's one of the flyover states, if I remember correctly, and kind of has a big plot of land, farm, bunch of kids, this kind of stuff. And realistically, we don't have anything in common.
Yeah, right.
And, we've had some, when COVID and politics and things, we've had some interesting debates that got to there were, I think it was more some of his friends were just rude. But even with him, there was some stuff where it was like, wow, that's really a little harsh. And then I saw a post, and it was a program that was for, I didn't know what it was about, but it's called Save a Warrior. And he posted something about it, and then he posted a podcast. He sent me a link to a podcast and said, check this out. And it's a lot of, like, if you go to the Save a Warrior website, you'll see, it's like a badge that somebody would have if, they're in the military. And I don't get much into military related podcasts or anything having to do with, it's just a different culture, and I'm not part of it.
Yeah.
And, I admire, I just have utmost admiration, but there's a certain mentality that I just don't relate to.
Yeah.
Well, I check out this podcast, and the podcast is called Behind the Shield, which just didn't even bring me any closer to like, okay, but Dave recommended I check this out, so I'm going to check this out. And let me see the Behind the Shields, was it Lives Depend on You? And I just was, I was like, oh boy, another one of these. So it's an interview with the guy that does Save a Warrior. And all of a sudden, this guy's talking our language, and specifically mine, meaning recovered alcoholic.
Okay.
And talking about first responders, former military, and a nonprofit that is addressing the incredibly high suicide rate of our military members and first responders.
Right.
And the one thing that they deal with is PTSD and trauma, and specifically childhood trauma.
Yeah.
And this program is free of charge. It's all through donations. And my friend Dave had gone through it. And he was extremely moved by it. And the one thing that really resonated with me, and part of it is because I've seen a lot of really ignorant opinions about childhood traumas.
Yeah.
And people who, they demean it, they, give it short shrift, they call it silly, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And here are former cops, firefighters, military, members of our armed forces, going to basically boot camp, like spiritual boot camp, and having their emotional guts ripped out to find a new way of living.
Oh, wow.
And it is a service-based recovery, meaning get out of yourself, help other people.
Right.
They go into childhood traumas. This is the thing that this mindset, these people don't talk about.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
You just suck this stuff up.
Right.
Until you pull your own gun out and put it to your head.
Yeah.
Because we don't talk about this stuff.
Yeah.
And I was so unbelievably moved by this program.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to bring it up here on the show that if you know anybody in these fields, and anybody, or just, it's worth recommending this. When I was done, I sent a message to Dave, and I just said, holy, like, I didn't even know what to say. He and I had the most in-touch conversation I have had with him.
Oh, wow.
Ever, because we were now speaking the same language.
Right.
He is recovering. He has been shown that he has suffered for a long time, and he shared the source of his suffering that he never knew was there.
Right.
Because
that's something a lot of people don't realize with, again, I'm not a doctor, blah, 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 but with a lot of childhood traumas is a lot of people don't realize that they've suffered them. There's a lot of childhood traumas that people don't realize. Oh, God, what's the name of that mental illness happy hour? I can't think of the guy's name who's the host now. Shoot. Anyways, he, when he talked about his own situation where his mom did a lot of things that were really inappropriate, and it wasn't like touching him, but she would still be nude around him or do things like that you don't realize are inappropriate and traumatic essentially when you're a kid. And I'm simplifying it. If you want to hear more on it, please go check out his podcast. It's a great podcast anyway.
Yeah.
But, he talked about that, and I've heard him bring that up with other guests on the show where it's like, I didn't know I was going through something until talking to my therapist down the road, and they were like, whoa, wait, what? Okay, let's unpack this a little bit, and then you find something, and this isn't a therapist just blaming your parents for a bad upbringing. It's none of that kind of thing. It's, things were things really shouldn't be happening to you because you're a child, and your parent is supposed to protect you from those things, not open you to those things. And that's kind of the situation he went through. So I can only imagine that, hearing something like that, especially from somebody like you said, that typically from what we know, they're trained to just bury it,
Yeah. Or fight it in
Or
their own
fight
way,
it.
go to war with it,
Yeah.
all the euphemisms. I'm just going to read off of Save a Warrior's page. It says, Save a Warrior is the original warrior-led, timeless heroic journey for active duty military, returning veterans, and first responders who feel desperately alone. We offer an alternative, holistic service that equips veterans, military personnel, police, firefighters, and other first responders with a community of support and effective techniques to overcome the symptoms and addictions associated with complex post-traumatic stress. Give us 72 hours, and you will change the way you see and live your life. And from what I heard and what I saw from my, friend Dave, they're doing it. And it reminds me of, one alcoholic helping another alcoholic, a warrior helping a warrior. And their first 24 hours is like, to me, it's like they've taken the spiritual and, functional aspects of rehab and combined it with like boot camp mentality.
Which makes sense, because that's how they, a lot of these, people were trained. So when you think, like when you go, oh, this is how they are used to things getting through to them, you use that, that way to teach them.
Why wouldn't you use that technique, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right? Like because it's a situation where most people that are recovering from addictions, we don't always know we've hit our bottom.
Yeah.
But more often than not, we've hit our bottom.
Yeah.
But in this case, there's no tools to know that you've hit a bottom with this. And from what it sounds like, they kind of help you find it.
Yeah.
And they don't stop until you find it. And that is very much like, like SEAL training.
Yeah.
We don't, we won't stop until one of you taps out of
Right.
here.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's we won't stop until you find it.
Yeah.
Hit your bottom, whatever it is, however they do to inspire the transition. So anyhow, we'll put the links in the show notes, saveawarrior.org. It talks about the program, donations, their team, and all that stuff. And I would recommend checking out this podcast. It was something. There's a long list of it's Behind the Shield. It looks like they do a lot with athletes and first responders and military members and stuff. But if you go to this was Jay Clark who started the Save a Warrior. This was his second episode, so it's episode 623, and it's pretty much available on any podcast service, including SoundCloud and whatever. So we'll post the links. Check it out. I think it might be an opportunity to help somebody. I think we all know somebody that is either former military, first responder, that kind of thing, and getting the word out. And that was what Dave was doing by recommending this. Is it could save somebody's life.
I think it's awesome too that it's not just military, that it is also police, firefighters, first responders also, because that whole group, is constantly under a trauma. Like their jobs can be very traumatic no matter which of those fields it is. So it's, I'm glad that it's not just sectioned to this or this. I would understand if it was, but I'm glad it isn't. I'm glad it's open to anyone who kind of fits in that mold of, especially like we said, the ones that are trained and, whatever, and told and whatever to, put it away or deal with it in some way that's not really good for you. So good. That's awesome. I always love hearing stories about, people finding help, especially like you said, because, suicides are on an alarming rise across the board. But just when you look into the numbers of first responders and military that commit suicide, it is so sad, especially because, you know, a lot of them probably could be preventable if you know, they felt that they could talk to somebody about them. So let's hope, you know, this opens the door for more and more people, so they see that there are people who care. It's okay to talk about it, and it doesn't make you like less of a man to talk about your feelings and, you know, not die via suicide. You know, that's why every time I see somebody that, you know, I wish the way men used to be, and I'm like, yeah, you know how many stories or how many times somebody's told me their grandfather killed themselves? And it's like the reason was, you know, they lost a job, you know, and it was like because they were like, well, what kind of man am I? I can't provide for my family. And it's like, that's horrible.
Yeah.
You know, that's so awful, you know, like, not that there's a, you know, good reason, but you know what I mean? It's like, I'm air quoting as I say that for anyone who's not in the room with me or, you know, I forget about that sometimes. With Salty Language, we do the video now, so I don't worry as much about it. I got to always remember with this show, it's like, if I'm being sarcastic, sometimes I got to kind of make sure I'm emphasizing that so someone knows that I'm not in any way saying that suicide is wrong. It's just sad. You know, as somebody who's, you know, for sure felt plenty of times about, you know, potentially self-harming or that's the answer. It's, you know, it just breaks my heart when I hear anybody feels that way, you know, and I've known so many people who've been, you know, left behind by somebody who committed suicide. And it's just so sad, you know, that.
Yeah. And, you know, these are people that have been given a set of tools and a set of practices that just aren't useful for them. And so this is a way to learn a new set of tools and a new set of practices. Yeah. And it's based on a combination of, you know, of contemporary science and traditional spiritual traditions, you know, ancient spiritual traditions, like they say here, you know, mindfulness and, you know, and psychological practices. And it's a combination of all, and it seems to really be working.
Yeah.
And
awesome.
It really, it was very inspiring, unbelievably inspiring to hear, you know, cause I get it. It's like we've all experienced people from different cultures, and this is a culture.
Yeah.
And this culture is not necessarily open to this kind of change.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're you know putting a dent in that, you know, a wall of resistance is you know, truly remarkable.
It is. You're absolutely right, because this is really there's quite a wall to chip through.
Oh yeah,
from the people I've known that have had these issues. Yeah. I mean, heck, even if you're not military or trained to whatever, you're not that older kind of masculine to where you're, you know, trained to bury it and pull yourself up and blah, blah, or man up, you know, it's still a heavy, you know, thick wall to chip through, you know, for anyone on the outside, let alone where you've also built a wall on, you know, like a bigger wall to protect yourself, you know. Yeah. So, yeah, by all means, check that stuff out. And, you know, as always, I always talk about reaching out and helping people, and it's just, you know, please help if you can. And this isn't, you know, like Heno said, it's like neither one of us are big on the, you know, however you worded that. I don't even want to try to tap dance around that again. But
just the general warrior culture.
Yeah, it's like it's not our lives. So, and I don't want to seem insensitive to that at all, because, you know, like I said, I appreciate what people do. I've said for years, you know, when people are, you know, it's like, hey, if someone else wants to go do it so that I don't have to, my hat is off to you, because I'm not built for it. So, you know, but I also understand that there's costs with it, and those costs, it sucks to see how many people are just thrown aside, you know, and
yes,
you know,
after that we as a nation, call, you know, men and women to war, and then leave, you know, basically leave the phone off the hook.
Yeah.
For when they return.
Yeah, when they need help. Yeah.
Yeah, and it disgusts me.
Me too. And that's where I really wanted to focus on, that is that, you know, no matter how you feel about the other is one thing, but they're still humans, and I still, I like to think of myself as a, person who practices and, kindness and empathy, and I don't want to see any human left behind. I'm not a fan of, using, once their use runs out, and you just throw them in the trash. I'm not a fan of that, so even if it's somebody I don't agree with and I don't necessarily like, I'm still very much similar to like free speech, right? It's like, I may not agree with you, but I will fight to the death that, we do get to say, we do get to, have our free speech and such. So it's similar in that regard. Is we may not be friends or get along, but I'm still don't want to see you, fall down. I still want to see us all do well. So.
One of their copyrighted phrases is "we came back for you." It's interesting you said that.
I like that because that's the no man left behind kind of thing.
Yep, that's the whole thing.
I really do like that because that is really, it is so sad. It's so sad. And again, almost all of us know somebody or have a family member or whatever that this has happened to.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And you can go on to Save a Warrior, and they've got a link to apply. You can just apply right through the website.
Awesome. Is it across the country, or is it just? Do you know that?
From what I understand, they have one office in like California and the other one in Ohio, I think. Or whatever their facilities or however it works.
Yeah.
But I seem to remember that it was 2 states, and I'm pretty sure it was Ohio and California.
Okay. Well, that's still cool, no matter what their reach is. I was just curious. It also could be that they station there, and then you could kind of work, like people could work. They can contact or put you in contact with what you need. So
yeah, they kind of do like you have to go there initially, but then now you're kind of like alumni, and then you're able to be part of like kind of extension programs and that kind of stuff.
Okay,
yeah,
fair enough. That's all right. Okay,
that's really cool.
All right, well, there you go. Well, we talked about quite a bit, and hopefully we learned some things, and we all get to practice being nice and helpful and all that kind of stuff. And man, it's the end of August already. I don't like it. Happen to live in part of the country. Like, it's weird, right? Like, how is it for you guys there? Like, do people get more excited because we're getting close to snow season? Or are they like, man, winter's coming?
Well, there's always a big party for the 100 days.
Okay. Because, like,
100
here,
days before ski season.
There's always people who like there's snow, Like, especially closer to Christmas, they want, a white Christmas. But then there's also a lot of people that are just like, oh, man, because the shoveling and the slush, the salt on the cars, like all that stuff sets in. That first couple snows, it's like, oh, it's so pretty. Look how serene everything is. And then, like, 2 days later when it's that, like, black slush that's everywhere and everyone's like, ugh, and it's overcast here usually, so it kind of just ruins the mood.
I mean, most people who live up here live to be, to be in the snow and be part of it. So
that's what I was.
Their mentality is a little different.
I figured so. That's why, knowing that you're near, ski resorts and stuff, I figured people would be a tad more excited there.
Yeah, definitely.
People definitely are here too, because the winter does bring its own stuff. But it's not hot. But then it's like, well, yeah, but now it's going to be cold, and hopefully we won't get buried in snow. All right. Well, fair enough. All right. Well, as Jen says, if you want to continue the conversation, you can reach out to us. I just closed the email on accident. So professional. Good thing I'm not getting paid. You can reach out to us at our website, which is thecrazylifepodcast.weebly.com. Our email is thecrazylifepodcast@outlook.com. The show Twitter is thecrazylifepod. And if you want to reach out to Jen, you can do so through our Facebook group, which is facebook.com/groups/crazylifepodcast, or through the Twitter account, or the email, or whatever, and just, address it to her, and we'll make sure that she gets it. Henno, how about you?
You can find me on Twitter @IdaHenno. Find me on Facebook and Instagram, Henno Heiter. And you can check out my other podcast, Moving the Needle Podcast, MTN.
MTN Pod on Twitter.
MTN Pod, on various things. Yeah. There's it's movies. So if you end up with some guy that talks a lot about sports, that's the other guy.
That's probably not them. Yeah.
And our last podcast was on this movie from the 80s called Cloak and Dagger. And our next one is going to be a Versus. It should be out in about a week. It's a dinner party episode. So it's two movies that are like kind of a supernatural or psychological thriller. Both of them are about dinner parties.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Yeah, I was wondering last episode. I was like, "Oh yeah, check them out." Blah blah blah.
Yeah,
and I just was like, I couldn't think of what your last episode was. I totally blanked, and
well,
I didn't
I'll
have
tell
it
you what
pulled up.
it was. I forgot too because it was the Cloak and Dagger one, and I mean, it's so obscure. You know,
Yeah.
it's like,
Well, it's funny because when I think of Cloak and Dagger, I think of the comic book.
yeah,
From that was mostly in like the 80s, 90s. You know, there was a series a couple years ago.
some too. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
a recent series of Cloak and Dagger.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So
This
it
is
was like
Dad-
That's
yeah.
all I can think of. But I know the one you're talking about. I know what the movie is. It's just
Yeah.
my brain immediately goes into comic books because you know that's what it does. if it's wrestling or comic books, that's
Yeah.
where my head's going. Right. Well, you can find me on Twitter at Stunami on Twitter and Instagram.
At Salty Language.
Yeah, you can find me at salty_language on Twitter. This is where my other podcast is, or at saltylanguage.com. That show is not safe for work. And the last episode, we talked about the weirdness at HBO Max, Gary Busey being a creep, allegedly. Japan urging youngsters to drink more, Chipotle candle, how Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation crashes hard drives, old ones, that is. You know, and a couple video games like Saints Row and Rumbleverse and various other stuff. So if any of that sounds interesting or fun to you, please go check us out. Again, the show's not safe for work, so please be careful who's around when you're listening. And, yeah, I think that's all of our... Yeah, I think I got all the other links out of the way. Oh, no, I didn't. We're part of the Tangent Bound Network, which can be found at tangentboundnetwork.com, so please go check out the other shows there. And if you're looking for a network to join or starting a new show, please hit them up and come join us. Or I could go with the one of us, whichever one you prefer. Yeah. And as usual, you know, as we were just talking, please reach out if you know somebody's going through something. You know, just check on them, see how they're doing. And if you need help, please, as much as like I've even talked and griped about it, it's like, please be patient. Please reach out. There's people out there that want to help you and will help you. Unfortunately, from different ones I've talked to, they are swamped right now. So, you know, please be patient. If you can't, there are resources out there like the, you know, suicide prevention hotline, the crisis text line and stuff out there. If you need, you know, immediate talk, they're not therapists, but they are, you know, somebody who can talk to you if you're in a situation. Or as we've said in the past, I haven't said this in a while, but if you feel that you may harm yourself or others, go to the hospital or, you know, that kind of thing too. So, and as always, please be kind to one another. You know, like I said, just please be nice when you're out. You know, just show kindness to others. Help if you can. Laugh at the dumb stuff in life because there's so much of it that rather than, it's so amazing how you see something really dumb in life sometimes and you see one person just get fired up over it and somebody else standing right next to him will laugh. You know, and it really is about training yourself and how you want to behave in that scenario. And, you know, I get it. Sometimes it's tough to laugh in some of them, but other times, I mean, you know, I was going in the store the other day and there's a stop sign right in front of the store, you know, so pedestrians can walk through. And me and this guy we were coming out of the store and this woman just comes through just fast enough that we're both kind of like, you could see us, we were both going to step out and then we kind of stopped and we're like, eh. And then she just rolled through. She wasn't going fast, but she was going fast enough that there's no way she was going to stop. Right. So me and this guy look at each other, and I just start laughing, and I'm like, she wasn't going to stop. And he goes, oh, no, she was not going to. And I was like, there's a stop sign right there, but she was clearly not. I think she was hoping that she would kind of give us a little brake pump, and that we would go, and stay back, so she wouldn't have to stop, you know. But it was him and I were just kind of laughing, and he goes, yeah, he's like, I was looking right at her and was like, I don't think she's stopping. And I'm like, nope, she sure wasn't, you know. So, you know, we just had a kind of a laugh and, you know, just went about our business. But, you know, like I said, that would have been one of those situations you could have stood there and be like, hey, there's a stop sign, and been all that person. But who cares, right? Like, in the end, okay, my choice is there where I could step right out in front of her and let her hit me, or I could stand back for a second, just let her go by and laugh at it. I feel like I chose, you know, correctly there. You know, I feel like the other way, it's the Ark of the Covenant kind of thing. It's just my face melts and it's no good. So, you know, if funny. You can be kind and laugh at the situations, you know, it helps so much. Now, I'm not saying I do it all the time, but in that instance. So, yeah, once again, just be kind and please, you know, put good energy out there, because there's so much anger and negativity right now. So, there you go. For Jen, wiggle your toes, and Henno, you want to take us home?
Oh, boy.
Just put you on the spot, huh?
I totally forgot about it.
Oh.
I was so into my sending you my Save a Warrior links.
Right.
Yeah. Hey, you know, I just got to go back with a classic. You know, don't worry about yesterday's pizza.